Hello and welcome to Wine with Wita, the podcast that is dedicated to engaging with health professionals and caregivers in meaningful discussions. I'm your host, Rita Shamoon, or as my clients call me, Wita. I'm a pediatric speech pathologist and I am so excited to have you here. Each week, we deep dive into connecting you with caregivers and healthcare professionals, sharing their insights, stories, and key takeaways to help you with your child's diagnosis and your journey. Whether you are a parent, healthcare professional, a lifetime learner, or simply a wine enthusiast, you're in the right place. So let's sit back and relax and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a wonderful episode of Wine with Wita. Today, I have a phenomenal guest who is a psychologist, but also a sibling to a brother that is autistic. Now, her name is Emily Hanlon, and she is the playful psychologist. Welcome, Emily.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. Now, we're in our mum rut that we just described. The kids are outside.
Yeah.
And I've promised my kids to have some screen time after the podcast if they stay quiet. What are you doing?
I've got two in school, one with their dad, and I've run over to my parents' house because we have no internet. So it's literally all happening today.
And if we just want to show the realities of parenthood, hey, there it is. We look quite pretty now. But
my God,
2 minutes
literally.
ago, it wasn't that. It wasn't that.
That's it.
Now, look, Emily, I came across your page by Jolene, who is the founder of Help You Cope last year. And I was just captivated by your advocacy for individuals with autism, but also for your role that you are playing with supporting women with ADHD and raising awareness. I'm just going to briefly read out your biography. You are a clinical psychologist and also the mum to three beautiful children, who's 4, 1, and a newborn. Oh, is she newborn anymore?
Well, not anymore. She's like 5 months already.
Yeah, it's like, when does that newborn phase stop?
I know.
About 7 months, yeah. You have a specific interest in autism and developmental delay. You're based in Sydney, and you've completed many presentations around ADHD, mood disorders, anxiety, and other behavioural concerns. You love to share your creativity, which I love, on your Instagram, and you have a brother with autism. Now, talk to me about who you are and what role you play with your family and your role in your work.
Awesome. So that pretty much sums it up pretty nicely. But so I'm a child and adolescent clinical psychologist. I work at the moment predominantly in the assessment space, but I have done a lot of clinical therapy in the past, and I will eventually get back to that when my kids are a little bit older as well. I'm also, like you said, the older sister to one of the funniest and most caring brothers in the world, who also happens to be autistic. And I'm really passionate about raising awareness for the whole family, obviously the autistic individual, and making sure they're supported as well, but that individual's village as well, because often it is the parents and the siblings of that autistic child or that neurodivergent child who are going to be that person's only support system, or maybe their only true social connections for a number of years. And if you don't look after their family and that small village, then what does that mean for the autistic person themselves?
You're so right. And it's about the continual advocacy that we need to uphold for the brother or a child for the rest of their lives, because unfortunately for many children or many individuals with autism, it's hard for them to advocate for themselves. And it's about having that village to support them along the way. Now, I'm not here to talk about your psychology. I'm here to pick your brain with what's it like to be in a family with a child with an individual that's autistic. Now, on your Instagram page, I just want to label some points you've mentioned. Having a brother with autism is amazing, and my brother is my best friend, but Hollywood glamorizes it way too much. Talk to me about that, and why do you feel it's glamorized so much when the reality doesn't depict what social media or the media present it to be?
I think what I meant by like Hollywood tends to glamorize autism and autistic individuals, it's more that like they give you this idea of like the person with the special interest or the unique talent who, you know, is has quite low support needs and can go on to be a surgeon and run the hospital and diagnose things no one else can diagnose, when in reality we are literally just trying to get through the day with less than 5 meltdowns, you know. And I think it's important to remember that autism as a, you know, quote unquote label is such a broad diagnostic term, and the support needs of every individual who is autistic varies so greatly. So I guess I get really frustrated when I see how autism is depicted in on TV and, you know, in movies and that sort of thing, because I'm like, well, where are the huge meltdowns? Where is the you know, what weren't toilet trained till much later in life? Where's the intensive speech therapy? Where's the in-home therapies? Where's the struggling to figure out how you're going to afford this therapy before NDIS, even now with NDIS and all the budget cuts that are happening? Where's all that? Where's the guilt that family members feel when, you know, they aren't able to provide the level of care that they feel like their autistic brother, sister, child needs? Where is all of that? It's not there. All we get is the world-class surgeon. And I'm like, quite frankly, I'm tired of that, because it's not representative of everyone who is autistic.
Yeah, I agree. It's like the media portray autism to be like the Asperger's and only that. So Asperger's, I would say that's about a level 1, again, pending the child's needs. And because they are able to communicate and get their messages across effectively, the meltdowns aren't shown, the sensory needs aren't depicted, the ability to be left alone and do things independently isn't depicted. And all that pressure and weight falls back onto the family and siblings as well. How old are you when your brother was diagnosed?
So our situation is a little bit different because Richard and I are 5 years apart. I'm older by 5 years, and his autism diagnosis is a secondary diagnosis to a traumatic brain injury that he sustained during a mismanaged birth. So,
Oh, interesting. I want to talk to your mum on a podcast one day about
yeah,
that.
you should. She's fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So while like we didn't receive the official autism diagnosis until he was like around 2.5, we were very well aware from birth that his support needs were going to be quite high. He was in intensive care at the Children's Hospital for months before he was able to come home. He was baptized 3 times because there were quite a few times where, you know, we didn't think he was going to survive and that sort of thing. So he, in addition to being autistic, is also quite medically complex as well.
The fact that you said he required 3 baptisms because you just weren't sure if he'll survive. Now that, as a mother, the weight of that. How is your mum after that experience, or your parents?
She is, they definitely don't talk about it as much as I think they should. I'll give you an example. When my youngest, Lily, was about 6 or 7 days old, she ended up getting a little bit unwell. Her breathing wasn't right. I took her to the hospital, and we ended up on one of the same wards that Richard was on when he was a baby. And my mum, when she came to visit us, had a trauma response that she wasn't expecting walking in. And Richard is now, 27 years old. So that was 27 years ago. And she still has like huge emotional reactions to triggers like that. So they're great. My parents are great. But it changed them completely, understandably.
Absolutely. And the impact of a life event and how it carries through is not spoken enough. And we need to start having these discussions that your response is normal. Let's guide you and access the services so you can cope with this if you were to have another trigger response again. Wow, that was interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So now you were 5, 7 years of age when your brother was diagnosed. I'm just thinking of my daughter who's 7 and how they would comprehend that as I'm going to be the big sister for my brother and help him express himself. not saying that you could remember, but what was like your childhood like with a sibling that possibly didn't want to engage with you?
Yeah, look, it was really tricky. I think as well, I did experience a lot of jealousy towards like other people in their typical sibling relationships. I guess
Mm,
my parents did a really good job in kind of trying to involve me as much as possible in his therapy. So Richard did quite intensive speech therapy, quite intensive occupational therapy, intensive physiotherapy. We often had parents coming in and out of our house. We were told he would never walk or talk. We were
mm,
told that he would have like hearing issues and he would be partially blind, all the fun things that you want to hear. So we did quite intensive therapy from very early on, and they did a really good job in involving me in that. So I had
mm,
like a little bit of a role in everything, and I thought it was super fun. But I think at the same time as well, it was really frustrating as a 7-year-old not quite understanding the role of therapy at that age. So going like,
mm.
well, this is annoying. Like, why does why do all these cool people get to come and play with like my brother and no one's coming to hang out with me? You know what I mean? Like, you don't sell speech therapy to a 3-year-old by being like, you're doing speech therapy and you're going to see it's fun, it's engaging, it's play-based, it's interactive. So I'd see that and be like, the hell? And obviously as well, he did take up, and again, very understandably, quite a lot of my parents' time and energy. And I guess it's just the little things that you reflect on. Like, I was very heavily into sport growing up, but I could only ever have one parent attend, big
Mm,
games. I was, very lucky if I could have a parent attend, because someone would always be home with Rich, because it wasn't necessarily from a sensory perspective an environment he could
yeah.
cope with. And you almost feel like guilty saying like, I could only have one parent, knowing that like so many people would kill to have one parent at their sports events.
Yeah.
But I think it's all relative. And growing up, I had two parents who I loved and who loved me, but I felt like I could only ever connect with one of them at a time.
Mm, mm. It also demonstrates the maturity and how much growing up you would have had to do as a 7-year-old to take on the responsibility to support your brother, but also that conscious awareness that these people are coming into my home to support Richard, because it's that aspect of, what about me? I want to play with Play-Doh and I want to play all these games. And it takes a lot for yourself as a young child to recognize it's not about me, it's about
Yeah.
my brother. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as well, like the one thing that I have realized over the years, and it's something that I'm like very, very well aware of, and something that I know is not a healthy thing to experience, but something that like I do struggle with a lot, is that guilt is the number
Mm,
one emotion I feel. So I did a lot of work a few years ago on myself, and a therapist I worked with was like, I need you to think back to the first experience that you remember of feeling guilty. When was the first time you experienced that sense of guilt? And I vividly remember that I would have been like 4.5, because my mum was pregnant with Rich, and she was pushing me on this big swing, and like my foot kicked her tummy, like ever so
mm,
slightly. And I didn't tell my mum this till I was probably like 10, but for years I was convinced that that is why Richard was autistic, or that is why he had all these
mm,
difficulties and that sort of thing. And it's this feeling of guilt that I carry along with a lot of the stuff that I do. Like, you want to be able to do everything to protect your sibling, but how do you do that, when they aren't even accepted by anyone, or when they
mm,
don't fit in, or, that makes me feel guilty. Or my brother went through his entire school experience without a single proper friend.
mm,
Sometimes he wouldn't even have a chance to speak to anyone all day, because other kids, didn't really give him the time of day, or maybe they weren't open to the way he was trying to communicate. And that makes me feel guilty. And I still feel guilty and anxious and emotional thinking about it. Sometimes now,
mm,
I'm in my 30s, I'm married, I've got my own kids. And if I can't see Richard, or I can't answer a FaceTime, or I can't answer a call, I feel guilty. And when I lived at
mm.
home, there would be times where like I would lie about where I was going to him, because I didn't want him to feel left out. Or I would say no to a lot of things, social things growing up, especially in high school, and make up random excuses, because I didn't want to leave him at home
Yeah,
alone.
yeah. That's a lot of guilt for you to carry, Emily. And you're
Absolutely.
not, and I'm the eldest of three at home, and
Mm,
my mum experienced 5 miscarriages after me. And I
mm,
was about 8 years of age when my sister was born. But just you talking about the guilt that, yes, I would sometimes think, did I
Mm,
accidentally cause mum to lose the baby? And
mm,
it's that subconscious guilt that you carry, which shapes a lot of your interactions with
totally.
everybody and who you become
Yeah,
as a mother. And
absolutely.
it's not until, sorry, yeah, continue.
No, I was just going to say it's like it's a little bit of it does shape everything, and it does make you, you know, I am a very much a people pleaser. I struggle to say
Yeah,
no, and it's something that I've worked on really hard because I feel so guilty when I do those things.
yeah.
And Rich has taught me so many important lessons, but for
Mm,
some reason, that feeling of guilt, that I get to do things that he can't do, or that things are more easily accessible to me and not to him, or I have the opportunities that he isn't, aren't open to him. Those
mm,
things are constant, right? They don't go away just because he's an adult now. If anything, they're more highly emphasized now. And
mm,
so
mm,
every time one of those things happens, and I'm able to do something that he's unable to do, or I do something that he doesn't like that,
mm.
that brings up those feelings of guilt again.
Yeah.
So it's this never ending thing. It's not something that like you can work on and then pop away because you've done the work and you've ticked the box, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Do you feel you carried the mum hat for Richard a lot of the time? So like the caregiver role?
Yeah, like definitely didn't replace my
Yeah.
mum is like literal superwoman. Like she's
Yeah, she
insanely
is.
she's crazy the amount of stuff she takes on. But in regards to being a caregiver, absolutely. Even now, like if
Mm,
Richard needs a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I organize those appointments.
mm,
If my parents are going out and Rich struggles to be home alone, like he can do it for short periods of time. It's more so his anxiety. He just does not like to be home alone. So we try and
mm.
limit that as much as possible. He stays with me more recently. My parents hadn't been on a holiday
I
without
saw
Richard.
that. I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
about that. Like you've
Um,
documented the precision with planning your parents' trip with
yeah.
even I remember seeing some color coding stuff that you
Yeah.
had and the attention to detail that you had to do so they can somewhat enjoy
Mm,
their trip away. Tell us about that because that was the first time
mm.
they traveled in 27 years, was it?
Yeah, so it's the first time they've traveled without Richard in
Richard,
27
yeah.
years.
Wow.
And they didn't want to do it. My dad especially was like, no, he either comes with us or we don't go. I was
Yeah.
actually the one that was like, you have to do this. Like, you guys
Yeah.
have to go. It'll be fine. Look, the timing wasn't ideal. I had like a
Yeah, the
5 week
babies.
old, like two kids. It
And I
was,
think
there
that's
was
where the
just,
whole people pleaser element comes in. I can do it. I
oh
can do
my
it.
God. And I was like, it's so fine. Like, I'm going to be so fine. I don't know what you guys are worried about. Like, whatever. And like, it was like we got through it, but Rich somehow contracted whooping cough, and
Oh,
like my baby hadn't been vaccinated against it yet because you don't get that vaccine till
yeah.
6
So
weeks.
6
So we
weeks. Yeah.
all had to go on antibiotics. Like it was a bit of a shit show, but we got through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the planning for it was like, okay, he will stay with me these days. We're going to book him in to go on trips. He loves going on
Yeah.
like supported vacation. So we booked him in it for as many as possible. We did that. We had a support worker who's been with us for years and years and years have some nights as well, just to break it up for us.
Yeah.
All these things were planned. He's going to get picked up here. He's going to get dropped off here. I have to drop him here. The NDIS taxi service will pick him up here and drop him off there. Okay, I need to organize this. It was a full-time
How
job.
exhausting.
It was exhausting. I guess that gave me a little bit more insight into like I guess sometimes as the daughter, I get a little bit like, oh, why do I have to be the one to organize the psychiatrist
Yeah.
or the psychologist? And my parents were always like, we're exhausted. Like I don't have the energy for anything else. And I never fully understood it until that
Yeah.
they took that trip and I was then in charge of everything,
Yeah.
obviously taking him to doctor's appointments, keeping up with his medication, supplements. He can shower and brush his teeth and stuff. He's quite independent in that regard, but needs reminders to do so. So it was just
Yeah.
like reminders to do that. And it was the level of detail that we had to plan in order to make that trip possible was like to the minute of every day.
How long did they go for?
3 weeks.
So that was 3 weeks. And how
Mm.
were you when they returned?
I was so relieved, not only because like to give Richard back, not in that regard, but because like I needed their help as well with all these kids that I
Yeah.
have.
You just had a
But it
5 year
was
good.
Oh my God. But it was really nice when they got back, just to, I guess, I think like we all appreciate having each other so
Yeah.
close a lot more.
Yeah. I love how you describe the exhaustion that these parents experienced with just organizing appointments.
Oh my
Could
God.
you give me a day in a life with a sibling with autism, and like with the meltdowns and the routine, if that
Mhm.
was out of whack? Like let's just paint a worst case scenario so people can understand
Okay.
what the reality is and how it's not glamorized.
As an adult now?
Yeah. Oh, you
Okay.
know what? Let's do a young child,
Okay.
and then
As a
let's do
child,
adult.
I think it was a little bit easier, just because generally life is more structured for children.
Mm,
So you've got school is on these days, school starts at this time, ends at this time, that sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, Rich always loved going to school, but was often sent home from school um,
Why?
for behavior. Them not really
Behavior?
under yeah, and
Oh,
by behavior, like, there were definitely, don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here being like, "Richard's an angel, everyone else,
yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah.
misunderstood." Like, there are times where he probably deserved to be removed from certain
Mm,
situations, but there are also times where I think he was sent home because schools just didn't know, weren't equipped, or didn't have the funding to be able to support him the way he needed to be
fast
supported.
forward a few more years, we're a little bit better. Yeah,
Yeah, I do
yeah.
think so, in a lot of regards, yes. So that would throw him a little bit, though.
Mm,
He is a very, very anxious person as well. So
mm.
being sent, he like he will be like, "Don't tell my mum, don't tell my dad, don't tell my sister," makes us sound as if we're like these like yelling
Voldemort.
Nazis. Yeah, literally, that like are gonna like tie him to the stakes sort of thing, and we're
Yeah,
just so
yeah.
not. So he gets like quite anxious about that sort of thing, like if
Mm,
something doesn't go to plan in that regard, or like if he does have a meltdown, even though for him the meltdowns now especially don't last hours, but the
mm,
repercussions of the meltdowns do. So if he, even as a child, he would have a meltdown and it would be huge, but it would actually be quite short for him. But
mm,
then ruminating on what had happened and the anxiety and worrying about the consequences of that and what he might have missed out on or why he had to come home, that kind of anxiety would send him into a loop, and we honestly deal with that for like days afterwards.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a family.
Yeah,
That's a
it
lot
is.
for a family.
And
Yeah.
it's like, it's about everything. So one of the things that he's quite anxious about is what is going to happen to me when my parents die. That's something that he needs to talk about quite a lot. My parents are, as far as I'm aware, perfectly healthy. They're not
Mm,
that
mm,
old.
mm.
Like my mum's not even 60,
Yeah,
but it's something that he wants to talk about constantly, which is like exhausting. I don't want
yeah,
to talk about my parents dying and what my will looks like and where he's going to live and
yeah,
that sort of thing. But he does reassurance seek a lot. And I think as well for him, it's that anticipation of something is going to change. And I need to know how that change is going to impact my life. Another example is my parents are actually in the process of moving house. We've
that would
been
be
in this
huge.
house. Yeah,
Yeah,
we've been in this house like almost 25 years. And
yeah.
Richie still calls this house the new house, because he's
Mm,
still recovering from the change that happened 25 years ago.
25
So
years ago.
he's like, even though this new house that they bought, frankly, they bought it because it's more suitable for him.
Mm,
It's also got a pool. Like, it's got so many things that are going to be amazing for him and his lifestyle as he gets older. But he right now is just so caught up on the fact that we're moving. We're getting rid of things. We're decluttering, and that he's actually handled the decluttering a lot better than I thought he would. But you could tell he's struggling, because I'll get a text message at 2 a.m. wanting to
yeah,
chat about it.
sweetheart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever create like a social story to help with that? Like for example, if God forbid, if mum and dad were to pass and you have those solutions, like for him to
Mm.
just gain that reassurance without asking you all the time, or mum or dad?
He, like, sometimes social stories have worked really well for him in the past, and other
Mm,
times it's more like he needs to actually verbally have that
yeah,
conversation with you.
yeah,
He's definitely more of that kind of guy. He needs the verbal reassurance, and he needs specific words to be said. So
mm,
he needs you to say yes at any
yeah,
cost to like the situation. And if you're like, "Hey, Rich, I've answered this question 40 times, I need a break from asking it. You know the answer. The need for him to hear that yes is so strong that he'll just ask a random question just so that you'll say yes. So you'll be like, he'll be like, okay, got it. You don't want me to ask anymore. I'm sorry for asking. I'm not going to ask anymore about mum and dad dying and where I'm going to live. Okay, Em? Okay. And I'll be like, okay. And he'll be like, is the grass green? Just so that you say yes.
Just so
because
you
he
say
needs
yes.
to have the last word. So I'll go, yes, the grass is green. Okay, that's enough for him. But if I was to say, it sure is, he would then ask another question that required a yes, no answer and hone in until the only possible answer was yes, because that's what he needs.
Yeah. I can does he ever use that to work in his favor all the time? Like, can I have chocolate? And even though he wants to say no, but then he wants you to say
100. He uses it all the time, and he'll be like, and you'll be like, Rich, I just need a break, or I just need space. He'll be like, okay, I'm going to give you space. Are you happy that I'm giving you space? And you're like, yes. Oh, I just did it again. Like he just traps you. Traps you into like giving him and then he'll like happily walk off. Like, gotcha.
I got the yes. I got the yes.
Yeah. So yeah, for him, social stories aren't necessarily what works best for him. We do say to him, like he has like just a notebook, and we say to him like, hey, we've actually spoken about this 3 or 4 times. I think it might be time for you to write it in your notebook. And at the end of the day, you can send me a photo of what you've written. Sort of thing. That works really well for him, but it's more so he wants to have the conversation. So like, for example, when I got engaged, he loves my husband, but his first question was like, well, where, if you've got Josh, where am I going to go? Sort of thing. And then when I fell pregnant with Luca and we told him, Luca's my oldest, he was quite excited, but again, he just needed confirmation that we were still going to look after him even though we have a child. With Elliot and Lily, my youngest 2, he loves them to death, but the more kids I have, the more stressed he gets about where his place is. He thinks he's falling down the totem pole a little bit, and I have to reassure him of like where he's going to live. Like, we've talked about how we would renovate the house so that he would have his own room, like all that sort of stuff. So it's a lot of exhaustion, and then you can't help but start to worry about that sort of stuff yourself. Like,
he makes you think it.
Like we're talking like hopefully 30 plus years away from this happening, and he's got me going like, do we need to move house to make room? You know what I mean? And then I start getting anxious about what the renovations would look like, and my husband's like, we don't need to renovate right now, like no one's dead, and like it's a lot.
I'm just, as you're talking about this, I could just feel the emotional exhaustion with the consistent repetition of the same story. Now, let's be real here. How many times have you cracked it? Because if it was me, I would like, okay, I've said it. I've heard it too many times. Like, can't you understand? Yeah.
So many times. I crack it all the time. And then I feel so guilty that I've cracked it, because I know that it's not, that it's what he needs. But I think what I like you said, on social media, I'm very open about sharing about all this sort of stuff, because I'm very passionate about supporting the whole village, which obviously includes that autistic child or that autistic person. But I think a lot of the time I do get a lot of backlash from it, from like autistic people, because they say, well, you're taking away from the needs of the child or the person. And I'm like, that's not what I'm wanting to do. That's not my intention. My intention is to go like, we need to support these people, these autistic people in our lives as much as possible, but you can't support that autistic person without supporting their village. You just can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
Agree. And I guess that's I don't know if it's like the whole neurodiversity movement where it's only about the individual. It's like, but we need to understand, in order for an individual with a disability to thrive, we have to support everyone else around them. I believe much more, because they need the emotional support, the mental support, and physical support, as well as the respite, because it does get overwhelming for every individual.
Seriously. And it doesn't end like, I just spoke about this trip that my parents took. I reckon about 5 or 6 times my mum was like, I'm booking a flight and coming home, like when things would happen, or, like there are a couple of things I needed to cancel because he got sick. So he was with me for longer than we had planned, and that sort of thing. And I've got like New South Wales Health calling me being like, he needs to isolate. I'm like, where do you want me to put him? Like, give me an answer. Like, where would you like him to isolate when he can't be left alone, when that's not possible for him? So it's all these things that and then I'm like sitting here going like, I feel like in that situation, I was like, am I being put in a position where I'm choosing between my newborn daughter or my brother? Like, either way, I'm doing something wrong here. I'm either not isolating my newborn away from my brother, or I'm sending my
Mm,
brother to be isolated alone, knowing full well that that
mm,
is a
mm, mm.
genuine.
So, and we were talking about how needing to support the village to support the child. Did you, as a young child, access any siblings with autism support groups to help you, just to have that voice to speak with? Because, like you also mentioned in your on your page, it's so hard to express yourself with a friend who doesn't have the same experience to know what it's like. Were
Mm.
there any services offered to you to support you?
As a child, no. As
Mm.
an adult, I created some, but yeah, there were none back then. Um, I did some like individual therapy and that sort of
Yeah,
thing. I was able to going through the year 12 high school certificate
yeah.
in New South Wales, I was able to access some like supports in regards to applying for unis and stuff. I didn't actually end up needing those, but it was good to have them
Mm.
to fall back on, because obviously like studying at home when meltdowns are taking place is a challenge in itself as
Yeah,
well.
I bet. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, as we know with kids, when they're young, their parents are their world. We always look
Mm,
up to our parents when we're children, but as they transition into adolescence, their friends become their world and their family are non-existent.
mm.
What was that like for you? Because you've openly expressed that it was hard for you to maintain relationship with friends, but as you got older, you lost friends
Mm.
because of that. They felt embarrassed around Richard.
It wasn't so much that they felt embarrassed. It was more that I was like, you guys aren't putting in any effort here. Like, you guys
Mm,
aren't putting in effort to getting to know him. You guys aren't even
mm.
asking me about him. You guys don't have any interest in having him around. So why would I want to be around you? So
Yeah.
it wasn't that they would like actively look embarrassed or act embarrassed. It was that there was just a sheer lack of effort.
Mm.
So I was like, well, I don't want those sorts of people in my life. And I just very slowly just stopped talking to them.
They
I
cut
think
off,
for
yeah.
us, like Richard and I have always been very, very, very close. But when I like turned 17 and got my driver's license, well, no, I got my driver's license when I was like 18. But
Mm.
like when that all that started happening, and I guess I got a little bit more independent, that's when
Mm.
our relationship really flourished, because like we would go on drives,
Yeah.
to McDonald's, or we would do this, or I would drop him to school. Or I would pick him up from programs, or like he could come in the car with me away from our parents. And I guess I could see how much, just like obviously any 15, 16, 17-year-old
Yeah.
wanted. He wanted to do things without his parents.
Yeah.
And
He
I
would have
could
loved
see
that.
that. Yeah, yeah. And then I guess for me, it was then really hard because I made the decision when I was 21 to move to Queensland.
Yeah.
And I was only going to be there for about 9 months just to finish off my studies, but I ended up being there for 6 years. I ended up doing my master's
Wow.
up there and then working
Mm.
up there for a little bit. And that decision was so hard, and talk about guilt. Like, I felt awful.
Mm.
I would talk to Rich every day. I would FaceTime quite frequently, like we were messaging constantly throughout the day. And I think as well, like a lot of people would be like, you talk to your family every day? Like, I don't. Like, I'm lucky if I talk to my family once a week, sort of thing, or blah blah.
Mm.
And I'm like, no, like I don't get, like, I have to talk to him, like, and I have to, and I want to talk to him multiple
Mm.
times a day, because otherwise
Mm.
I'm like, who is he going to talk to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just shows you're like his person. You know how in Grey's
Mm.
Anatomy, Christina Yang and Meredith is
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
"You're my
yeah.
person." When
Yeah.
you're talking about Richard, I feel like he's your person just as
Yeah,
much as
yeah.
you're his person for him, and I think that is such a beautiful gift to have,
Yeah.
and a relationship to have in your life.
It definitely is, and I don't want to, like, so often when I have these conversations, I worry that I paint it in too much of a negative light. Like,
No.
he is so, like, honestly, he's genuinely one of the funniest people you'll ever meet. Like, some of the stuff he comes up with, I'm like, where did that come from? And he has like taught me so much, and he's such an amazing uncle. Like, it's funny watching him like play with my kids sometimes, because I'm like, it's sometimes, he struggles with pretend play a lot. So
Yeah.
an example is like my son Luca loves pretend play. like
Yeah.
loves we have like a fake kitchen, and he'll be like, uncle, do you want me to make you a coffee? And instead of being like, sure, like I'll engage in this play, Richard's like, oh, I just had a hot chocolate, no thanks. And we're just like looking at him like, what? And I'm like, oh, Rich, like just like say yes, I would like a coffee. And then Richard's like, but I just had a hot chocolate. I'm like, oh my god. What's
Maybe when
going
he
on?
hasn't had the coffee, so he can actually say yes, so he can hear yes.
Oh my god. I'm like, so like just stuff like that is so funny. And like we have such good times, you know. I often still travel with my parents and Rich and that sort of thing, so we have all these beautiful memories, and he's just so amazing. So I really don't, if you are listening to this, like I don't want you to think that it's all negative, but there are so many beautiful elements to our relationship as well that go both ways. Like he teaches me
Yeah.
just as much as I teach him.
Yeah. And it's the reality that there's beauty and struggle in every
Mm,
family, rather even if you have even if you don't have a child with a
mm,
disability, but it's about recognizing the hardship and challenges that these families experience, so we can
mm.
be more compassionate and empathetic, and also create that space like, hey, I've been here. It's okay to have those feelings of
Totally.
guilt and shame and everything that you experience, because that's the
Absolutely.
reality. And we need to talk about that more so people don't keep internalizing all these
Absolutely.
emotions, because it's not healthy to do it that way.
That's it, and just things that, like, seem so ridiculous, like, you know, updated my will. So,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, so, like, I need to make sure that my parents' will, I get Richard, whatever, that's tick that
Mm,
box. Okay, so in my will, I've got Richard. So what happens to Richard if I die? Okay, better call all my
yeah.
cousins, you know? So I'm
Mm,
calling all my cousins, hey, quick question. If my parents die and I die and all these people die that we're apparently in a traumatic plane crash and we all died, will you guys take Rich? Yes, sweet, absolutely. Okay, cool. That's number one. If we were
how
to
was that
die
phone call
and
when you're
I
calling your
die,
cousin?
like, they're so used to it now. They're just like, yeah, of course, man, whatever. Like, so if I die, and then I so tick, we've got that box. All right, but what if he dies? So if my parents die, I die, and Andrew dies, I better call Andrew's brother. You know what I mean? Like it's just and like, and then you stop, like you're like, cool, I've got it, and then you reflect on it, and you're like, that is so not normal.
As you're saying it now, I'm like, I
It's
haven't even asked
like
my own sister yet.
I haven't even planned for my own kids yet. Like, so I'm really hoping everyone kicks on for a few more years, you know?
And I guess that just really shows how structured and how detailed and how forward planning you need to be for the unpredictable situations your child or your sibling has to
Literally.
possibly endure.
That's
So
it.
if God forbid you're not around, there is that plan there to suit your brother, so
Mm.
it doesn't cause more havoc than what it already has.
That's exactly it. I shared this thing on Instagram like a couple of weeks ago, and it was like when people ask what your biggest fear is, and you can't say
Yeah.
dying before my autistic brother and leaving him with no one, so you just say snakes. You know, it's
Yeah.
it's it's exactly that situation. And I know that that whole talk about death is not going to be relevant to every autistic person or every autistic family because everyone is going to have other things that trigger them or whatnot. But that's a big one for us, and it's something that we do like the level of you want to talk about level of detail? I don't even know if I
I
should
love
share.
it. You know, like I love office works and highlighting stuff. So
Yeah.
as you were saying that, all I could vision is this timeline with color coding, and I just got this happy bubble. So please
Okay.
tell me.
Okay. So this is the level you're gonna be like, people are gonna be like, oh my God. Okay, so this is the level of planning. So we've got all that information, but then Richard now wants to know his new thing is like, what happens when you die?
Yeah,
So we're Catholic, we're like, you go to heaven. Okay, but how do
yeah.
you get to heaven? And then his big thing is, I don't want to be put in the box, which is a coffin. He calls it a
Coffin.
box. I don't want to be put in a box. We're like, trying to be like, you won't end up in the box. And again, we're Catholic, we're like, Jesus will come get you
Yeah,
and take
yeah.
you to heaven. He's like, so he'll swing by. And we're like, sort of. Yeah, like he sort of swings by it. He's like in a car. Like he wants like all these details. So like we're just making up facts
Do
about
you laugh?
Jesus.
Do you laugh when this happens?
Sometimes,
Like they have
but
to be
like
so
sometimes I
serious.
feel like I like black out. And then I reflect on the conversation and I'm like, do I need to go see a priest? Like I've just made up this ridiculous story about what happens when you die. Like Jesus is swinging by in a car, he'll grab Rich, they'll drive to heaven. Like,
Jesus will bring the
like
hot chocolate.
Literally. And like this is what I mean by level of detail. I hope that really highlights the level of detail that we need to go to.
You know what I love though? That we can actually have a chuckle of it, because how
Absolutely. If you don't laugh, you'll
stressful is
cry.
it if you can't laugh about the specifics of it, how can you
Exactly.
get through it? You know, and I
Exactly.
think that's the
Exactly.
thing we need to start having. Let's look at these situations that are funny, even though it's not in the moment, but you know, it's actually created a beautiful story and also
Exactly.
brought laughter too.
That's it. That's exactly it.
You mentioned how hard it was when you were getting married and the conversations that you had to have with your husband. Now, for anyone getting married, it's not a conversation that you would normally have. You know what? My brother comes first. And if you're not prepared to deal with this, then I'm not the person for you. How is that as a woman who wants to spend her life with this wonderful man, but then also say, there's also this wonderful, my best friend, his needs also important. What was that like?
I think it's like, so I met my now husband when I was 21, and
Yeah, young.
like, yeah, I was quite young, and I essentially laid it all out on like the second date, not because I was like, you need to know all this about me, but because I was like, I don't want to waste my time. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's the point of getting attached to someone if they're not going to attach to my whole family? So I was just like, yeah, and I guess at that point as well, I was just at the point where I was not bothered wasting my time in any sort of situation, like friendships as well. So I was quite upfront about it, and like I'm really thankful that obviously he was totally fine. At the time, he couldn't have cared less. He's like, yeah, that's your brother. Yeah, of course he's going to be a part of my life. Yeah, why would I get in a relationship with someone if I didn't care about their family, sort of thing. So I'm very lucky. He loves Richard like his own brother, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But again, I think it highlights that it's just not a conversation that you should have to have on a second date at 21 years of age.
No.
You know, it's just not.
Yeah. No. And that really just shows the maturity with you and how you need to consider other aspects rather than, oh, we're going to get white or red roses today for Valentine's Day, you know, and it's like, well, no, it's either my brother or nothing. Yeah. And that's hard. That's really, really hard.
It is. And I vividly remember like recently, so we're in like a 4-bedroom house, but downstairs in our house is like this cool playroom. Like we set it up as a playroom. So our boys share upstairs and our daughter is in her own room, right? And then in the middle of the night, like a few months ago, I like sat upright and I was like, where's Richard gonna, like, just randomly when I was like, Josh, where's Richard gonna live? Like if he was to come in. And he was like, oh, it's like literally 2 a.m. And he's like, Emily, like, relax. I've already thought about it. And he like walked me through the rough plans on how we would extend the front of our house. So I'm like, that like level of, and my husband is the most chill guy in the world, not a planner, very like, relax, like whatever will be. And even he now is like planning for random events that might happen to make sure. So like it's all consuming.
Yeah. That's a lot. But yeah, like it's about, you have to have a plan because you just don't know how the situation will turn out. Now, let's talk about Richard in his adult life. I know he's associated with something with chocolate.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. When I saw it, I was like, oh, what a great success story.
I know. So basically, he tried a lot of like mainstream kind of employment opportunities and they just didn't really work for him on both ends. Some of them, sometimes the workplace was awful. Sometimes he just wasn't the right fit for the role and that sort of thing. And then during COVID, a lot of his, experiences and outings and groups and vacations and stuff were obviously put on hold. They were cancelled. And he started making chocolates out of home. He bought some cool chocky molds and then he made a few TikTok videos and it kind of just went a little bit viral. And he created a business called Freckly Faces where he like hand makes chocolates in different shapes and stuff for like, he does custom orders if you need custom packaging or you want something specific for like a birthday or a baptism or even a wedding. And then he sells like Christmas freckles, Easter freckles, or just original like huge freckles, and they're so good. And I'm so lucky because I get all the wonky ones.
Yeah. Does it have an Instagram page or only on a website?
Yeah, he has an Instagram and a TikTok. That's where he's most active, and it's just Freckly Faces.
Oh, I'm going to put it in the show notes. I think let's just celebrate his own work and buy off him rather than the generic businesses out there.
Yeah, and they taste better because it's homemade.
Yum, especially with Easter coming up, it'd be wonderful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Emily, I really appreciate your vulnerability today and how amazing this conversation was between all the challenges you experienced, but also your essence with just being so real with it all and not glamorizing the situation, but also how beautiful it can be. Now,
Thank
many
you.
parents are listening with a daughter or a younger sibling or older sibling. What word of advice could you give them now that you're in your full bloom self to them to give to support their other child too?
I think the number one thing I want to reiterate is like, if this feels impossible and it feels hard, it is because it is. Like, how do you parent two kids or multiple kids in completely different ways while trying to ensure that both of them feel loved and heard, and ensuring that both of them get the supports they need when their support needs are so different? And I think if that is something that you are struggling with, don't be afraid to reach out to a psychologist and actually get some like individualized strategies. I mean, I've written a support guide for siblings, and that would be a
Have
good
you?
starting point. Yeah, so it's like a 3-part resource. It's like a guide for parents, a guide for the siblings, and then a picture book on explaining autism to siblings.
Is it something they purchase or is it just
Yeah, it's a
easily accessible?
digital download. So you purchase it
Okay,
on
I'll
the
put it in the
website.
show notes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'll
absolutely.
send you the
Yeah.
link for it, and that would be a good starting point just to familiarize yourself with stuff and maybe even learn things from the sibling perspective. Because I think one thing I want to reiterate is the parent experience of raising a neurodivergent child is challenging, and it's not that it's easier or harder than being a sibling. It's just totally different. The experience of being a parent versus being a sibling is totally
So
different.
different.
So I
Yeah.
think it's important for parents to educate themselves on some of those difficulties that siblings may be experiencing, hence why I created this. And then I think as another step, it would be, going and seeking the support of a psychologist that can really help you with some individualized support.
Yeah. I love, how you've taken your lived experiences and you've created something so other families can have some sort of relief or guidance
Totally.
with knowing how to do it. And I'm anticipating you becoming a psychologist was also because of the challenges that you had,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah,
just the
totally.
need to do that? Yeah.
It was more, I just wanted to we always had helping professions coming in and working with Rich, and I was like, I want to do something like that. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Mm,
This has been wonderful. Probably one of my favorite episodes. It's been great to talk to you today. Now,
Thank
but
you.
I ask all my guests this question.
Go for it.
If you were to be a better version of yourself tomorrow, what word will you apply to yourself today?
I think resilient. Like I think I'm a very resilient person, but I don't think you can ever be too resilient. So I would
Yeah.
like to keep working on that.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, and
Yeah,
every
that's it.
experience just makes you more resilient. Yeah, too
Exactly.
beautiful. Now, for anyone that wants to reach out to Emily to access her resources, but also to see her wonderful content on social media, do look up the Playful Psychologist, and I will include all her social media platforms and website in the show notes. You have been a darling. I have loved this conversation. I look forward to sharing your wonderful work along the way too.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. It was so great to chat.
Oh, you're more than welcome. And to everyone else, another episode of Wine with Wita will be released really soon. Have a beautiful day and speak soon. Bye. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Wine with Wita. I hope you found some new inspiration, learnt something new, or gained a fresh perspective. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be so grateful if you please leave a 5-star review, as it really helps the show get in the ears of new listeners, plus it takes 5 seconds. If you're keen for more strategies and insights, then head over to Instagram and follow RS Speech Pathology.